28 years later, The Bone Temple was one of my most anticipated movies for 2026. That feels crazy given that it was coming out within the first month of 2026. But after last summer's 28 years later, how could I not be hooked? That was one of my favorite movies of last year. I thought it was such an exciting return to the franchise. It simultaneously was a love letter to the franchise, but it also took it to new, exciting places. And then they announced Nia DaCosta was going to be behind the camera for this iteration, and I was just so aggressively sad. I love Nia DaCosta. People were so annoying to her when she was directing the Marvels, but I think she is a director who has so much range. I mean, just look at what she's done already. We have Little Woods, Candyman, Hedda, the Marvels, and now this. Like, I think she is someone who can kind of do a little bit of everything, but still bring her signature eye to it. But The Bone Temple was not at all what I expected it to be. This movie picks up immediately where 28 years later left off. Dr. Kelson finds himself with an odd, new, and unexpected companion. This relationship may change the world as we know it forever. And meanwhile, Spike is now embroiled in the sinister group of Jimmies led by Jimmy Crystal, and he's learning that they may be more of a nightmare than the actual infected. First things first, Nia DaCosta's direction. It's very different than 28 years later. She's not at all trying to imitate Danny Boyle, and I think that is such a good thing. It would have been probably not good for her or anyone to kind of come in and just like mimic it. I think she manages to make this feel spiritually similar to the other entries in the franchise. It still feels like it's part of the franchise, but she's bringing her own sense to it. And whereas Danny Boyle approached 28 years later with this kinetic, visceral energy, Nia DaCosta is implementing a lot of restraint behind the camera. She's really maximizing space. She's using space in very interesting ways. There is a distance to a lot of things. She really basks in the stillness. And I think that works so beautifully because the script is so meditative and much more patient than previous entries. I want to preface that this is a patient movie. I said right when I got out, I would like to see it again with that in mind and like knowing what I'm kind of in for energetically. I think I'll be able to like sit in it much more prepared and like open-minded and not trying to calibrate to what it is. But I really loved the restraint on display. But just because it is more restrained does not make it any less gruesome. It's actually strikingly gruesome. And I think the fact that DaCosta portrays it in such a restrained, not flashy way, it almost makes the gore and the gruesomeness all that more chilling and hard to sit through. There's no frills about it. It's not like really heightened or anything. It is so like plainly presented. I don't mean plainly in a derogatory way, but it is just presented for what it is, and it makes it really, really challenging in an effective, impactful way that you would want from a horror film. I also think the overall like temperature of the film, it allows these like really interesting themes to trickle in and come forward, some of which we played with in 28 years later, the original installment of this new trilogy. For example, I think 28 years later really introduced the idea of like what happens when our social structures really crumble. Like, what does that look like long term? Specifically through the lens of like Spike's mom and her illness. Like, we don't have like these healthcare systems anymore. We don't have these things in place. So like, what does that look like? We also kind of see what happens when we don't have like social hierarchy in place in there. I think this one really builds on that. There's comments about how like these structures that we thought were infallible just crumbled right before our eyes. And I think like through Dr. Kelson, Ray Fiennes' character, and Jimmy Crystal, Jack O'Connell's character, we really see like the way people respond to that and like how they navigate it and what they use as like their North Star. Dr. Kelson, obviously a doctor, really science minded, really approaches survival from a scientific perspective, and he's able to like really have a relationship with the new world, with the infected itself. And I think that like paves the way for a lot of that character's empathy, whereas the Jimmies rely on this religious fanaticism that like answers the questions they have. It allows them to make sense of this awful and brutal world, and they also use it to justify their actions. It's quite sad, it's quite chilling, it's quite scary. A lot of the horror of this movie comes from the Jimmies, led by Jack O'Connell. He's playing another weird evil guy, much like Sinners, but this one is also just like so chilling. I think what makes it so tense and scary is you like really don't know what he's gonna do next. He feels like a live wire. He's gonna just do any and everything. Ray Fiennes is like a great counter to that. That character is so warm and empathetic and like has such a kind energy. The way Ray Fiennes like looks at certain characters says it all. But there's also like this beautiful loneliness to that character. You really get to see him sit in his melancholy a bit. Like, yes, he's managed to survive. Yes, he has been able to help all these people, but you feel the weight of like what being in close proximity to a lot of death does to a person. I think Alfie Williams continues to really grow as a performer as Spike. I don't think Spike as a character really does much. It's not like the first one, but Alfie Williams is really good in this. I think this character just kind of gets taken along for a ride as opposed to driving the ride. Erin Kellyman is terrific as Jimmy Ink. She's kind of one of two secret weapons of this movie. I think she has a fabulous like internal struggle going on of wanting to believe in this thing but like really having questions and doubts and being one of the few people to push back on this ideology. And then we have Shia Lewis Perry, who plays Samson, the alpha of the infected. He's giving a terrific performance. What he is conveying with just his eyes, with just his body, very, very impressive. I was really stunned by it. I really loved how this film played with Samson, played with his interiority. I think Nia DaCosta does some really cool work specifically with that. I loved that piece of it. At the end of the day, this franchise has always been about like humanity and what really makes a monster. And I think this one is the most empathetic yet towards the monsters, so to speak. 28 years later was very loudly in conversation with our current culture, and I think this one also is too, in a very different way. It showcases this very interesting idea about how like this collective anger is a cloud over our judgment, a cloud over our mentality, and beneath it, like we can still tap into our humanity. That humanity is still alive and well in us. And I think it's like loudly pleading for people to hold on to that, to like hold on to what makes you a human instead of giving yourself over to the anger and to the fanaticism that's trying to justify all the darkness and that takes you down a path of darkness. I thought this was really, really good. I, again, want to see it a second time with my expectations in check and just so I can, like, really marinate in it. A lot of times, like, when I go into a movie and have, like, different expectations and it's not the movie's fault, it is, like, my brain's fault, but, like, sometimes you're trying to recalibrate. So I would like to see it not recalibrating to it, like, really experiencing what it's trying to do. I walked out of the first one feeling like I could run through a wall, and this one I feel much more like somber, but not in a bad way, and I think that's the movie's intention. This is also very much a part two. A lot of the common critique of the first one was that it was setting up more, and I do think this one feels like a middle chunk of a larger story, but I do like that. It does feel like there is intention and driving momentum to this big final conclusion, and I'm really eager to see what that third chapter looks like. I'll be interested to see how this grows with me, but right now I'm giving it a 4 out of 5. I think this is a really exciting way to start the year. We don't get many really good movies like this in January, so what a treat. Nia DaCosta, the director you are, I love you so much, and bring on part 3. Thank you so much for tuning in. Make sure you do all the things you're supposed to do with a YouTube video: like, comment, subscribe, share. Getting into 2026 movies, there will be more reviews, and we're in the thick of award season, so you won't want to miss that. But until the next time, bye.